Right now on the National Weather Desk, tracking the tropics for a possible storm next week.
It will bring a plume of moisture into the Gulf of Mexico.
Fall warming from coast to coast. The last half century has seen a rise in autumn temperatures.
We're looking at nationwide warming with the Southwest taking the crown, but actually northern Maine is the outlier.
Where's the rain? Many communities are waiting for much needed water.
Irrigation is keeping the crops alive. We have water. The difference is vast.
The buzz on bites. It's been a mosquito season to forget in many parts of the country.
Weather has actually made this mosquito season worse, and that all goes back to last winter.
And how about them apples? Thanks to Mother Nature, some farmers are looking at a bumper crop.
The apples harvest is tremendous.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. While hurricane season so far has been much calmer than many forecasters expected, we continue to watch the possible development of a system close to the Gulf of Mexico. No storm has formed yet, and likely there won't be one until the middle of next week. But everyone who lives near the Gulf needs to pay attention to the forecasts. Meteorologist Jennifer Collins has more.
Monitoring 3 areas in the Atlantic Basin for potential development. 2 will likely remain out over open waters here over the next few days. And then monitoring 1 area in the Western Caribbean. This has a 40% chance of development. Could see an area of low pressure develop and maybe a tropical depression form sometime next week. What we do know with the system is that it will bring a plume of moisture into the Gulf of Mexico by the middle and end of next week. And we'll closely monitor that for potential development. As of right now, no direct threat to South Florida currently, but we'll keep a close eye on that system. Helene is the next named storm of the season. We have a ways to go until the end of hurricane season, which is on November 30th. So very important to pay attention to the latest forecasts that are issued.
And there's another threat of severe storms today in the lower 48. The greatest risk extends from northern Minnesota and Wisconsin all the way to Kansas, the Twin Cities, Kansas City, and Des Moines. A few tornadoes, isolated large hail, and damaging winds could occur. In North Carolina, severe weather earlier this week caused flooding and dozens of road closures. It's making life difficult for residents on the state's coast. Here's a look at some of the damage left behind in Southport. On Wednesday, Governor Roy Cooper said roughly 60 roads are currently closed throughout North Carolina. Much of the region was drenched by more than a foot of rainfall. Emergency officials said a state of emergency is likely to stay in place through the week. Fall is getting warmer across the United States. According to Climate Central, the season is, on average, 2.5 degrees warmer across the country than it was back in 1970. Fall warming is widespread across the nation, but most intense in the Southwest. Cities like Phoenix and Tucson, they average nearly 40 warm fall days above normal every year. A warmer fall season prolongs risks to heat-related illnesses, wildfires, and allergies. If you look closely at the map, you'll see northern New England is also experiencing warmer fall days, according to Climate Central. Meteorologist Emily Santom takes a closer look at the situation in Maine.
Let's check out Portland, though, their fall warming. The average temperature increase since 1970, so over a 50-year period, 3.6 degrees. The nationwide average air temperature increase is 2.5, so we're already above that data right there. We actually also saw 18 more warm fall days since 1970, so those are days where temperatures were above the normal. And actually, including all of September, 11 out of the first 17 days featured temperatures that were above the normal. Let's head north up to Presque Isle, which is next to Caribou. They had an even higher temperature increase of 4.8 degrees. They also found that 23 days feature temperatures that were above the normal, which is a little bit more than Portland itself.
Many parts of the country are still feeling the effects of drought, or at least a general lack of rain. This morning, we're going to take a closer look at 2 of those regions and how the dry weather is impacting life there. But we begin with meteorologist Ryan Munn in Portland, Maine.
A drought comparison is no exaggeration. Phoenix, Arizona has seen more rainfall this month than Portland, Maine. And all across the state, that is starting to cause some issues. Many of our rivers and streams have lowered well past their typical levels. Some of the riverbeds have even started to dry up completely. Grass is also having a hard time as many lawns are starting to turn brown and starting to die out. So far this month has been the second driest start to September that we've had on record, with only 0.01 inches of rain. This is also starting to cause a very small portion of the state, extreme southern Maine, to show up in the abnormally dry category on the drought monitor. It might not seem like much now, but it will only get worse if rain doesn't start to fall soon.
It's been more than 20 days since it's rained in the South Bend, Indiana area. After so much time, the lack of rainfall is taking a dangerous turn. Officials in 3 counties have put burn bans in place because conditions are so dry. Nick Outoff reports.
Be vigilant and be smart with how you're burning.
People in Marshall County, among more than 40 other counties across the state, have been placed under a burn ban due to the elevated risk of fire. Lack of rain means brush and grass are bone dry. In Marshall County, the threat level has only gotten worse, forcing emergency management to make this decision.
The first step is just examining how dry the weather is. And then there's other factors on top of that. So if we think it's going to be super windy for a long period of time, which we aren't seeing right now, then sometimes that'll kind of exacerbate that process for us.
Marshall County's Fire Association president says the smallest accidents can lead to massive consequences.
My gosh, it's so easy for accidents to happen that we just want to try to help them avoid an issue if we can do that.
Small campfires and fireworks are still permitted.
Summer's wrapping up and farmers are preparing to harvest their crops. Last year, drought conditions in the nation's heartland caused issues during harvest time. So how will things look this year for corn and soybean yields this year? John Garlick tells us more.
Some area producers have already started harvesting corn, and experts say yields are coming in strong. Valerie Tate, a field specialist in agronomy for University of Missouri Extension, expects this year's crop to be one of the best in several years.
In 2024, we were in much better conditions as far as soil moisture for crop growth than we were in 2023. And so we are anticipating a good crop of corn in particular. A lot of farmers in our area have started to harvest corn, and it appears that the crop is going to be one of the better crops we've had in the last few years.
Despite plenty of rain this year, the past several weeks have been really dry in the heartland. While that hasn't hurt the corn crop, soybeans might be impacted. Tate explained how the past couple of weeks could affect seed size on beans.
Soybeans, on the other hand, are still filling, and so seed fill is still in progress for the soybean crop. And so the dry conditions that we've had the last few weeks may impact that crop, particularly on seed size. And so some additional moisture right now would be very beneficial. I've seen some people irrigating their soybean crops right now because this is a critical time for seed fill.
Tate also mentioned that additional moisture, along with cooler nighttime and daytime temperatures, could help produce a nice crop of hay for fall grazing.
And the Lost Lands Music Festival is about to get underway in Ohio, but due to dry conditions, attendees have to be mindful of extra rules. Details from meteorologist Sarah Converse.
Absolutely no fireworks, no pyrotechnics, no idling vehicles, no cooking with propane.
Still, the show must go on at the Lost Lands Festival in Licking County.
They're allowed to use electric cooktops. But that becomes a little bit tricky because they're unable to use generators and start their vehicles.
A burn ban in effect because of severe drought conditions.
No smoking.
That's Assistant Fire Chief Kyle Weekly. His Licking Township Fire Company, not to spoil the party, but to make sure everyone stays safe, dancing to the beat. The same goes for Licking County deputies.
We have, I think, 24 deputies on site now. I think 11 roving units out and about. We also have our command center and our camera and the fire department to make sure that, if there is an issue or we see a potential issue, we can head it off before it gets started.
The festival starts this Friday and lasts through the weekend.
For all the most up-to-date weather content, be sure to follow us on social media. We also post content from our team of 200 meteorologists across the country. Just search the National Weather Desk on your favorite social media platform or scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, it's apple season. We'll look at how the weather has impacted crops in northeast Wisconsin. And with the changing season comes fall foliage. We'll look at how people are using computers and AI to track the best fall colors.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. Most of the Northeast will top on the 80s today. Parts of New England, however, will only stay in the 60s and low 70s. And the reason for that, we're on the edge of a storm system that will bring some heavy rain for parts of southern New England, particularly southeastern Massachusetts. There'll be a good chunk of the Northeast that will stay dry out of this one. We're on the edge of that ocean storm. Many areas will see no rain at all. Best chance for seeing some rainfall will be southern New England and coastal parts of Maine.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Your Thursday starts out with clouds, some spotty shower activity through the day, but we'll get a little bit of sunshine to reach the ground throughout your late afternoon, which will help warm temperatures up a bit. Winds will start coming around out of the north as we head into your weekend, so temperatures will be gradually cooling down day by day. Thursday looks to be fairly warm, 80s or so, except in the mountains in the 70s. But as we head later into this weekend, again, we're going to be talking about those temperatures cooling down to the 70s for highs.
I'm meteorologist Vetus Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. Looking at 90 degrees in Nashville, 85 in Atlanta, about 91 in Mobile, hot there, 90 in Tampa, only 79 in Raleigh, where we're still seeing some clouds associated with that low that's moving up along the I-95 corridor. Putting in motion, we have a lot of sunshine over the Mississippi River Valley, and then you get down towards Atlanta and Florida. There could be some coastal storms in the afternoon and evening, but for the most part, looking at going into Friday on a drier note.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
A gorgeous rising of this month's harvest moon. It gave a spooky look over part of Utah Tuesday night, and a partial lunar eclipse with the Earth's shadow passing over part of the moon's surface. Also in Utah, a view of early season snow 8,000 feet high. And how's this for music to the eyes? Vibrant colors set to the end of day.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on Instagram.
Fall is nearly here in northeast Wisconsin. That means it's time for apple and pumpkin picking. But how did this spring and summer's weather impact the fall crops? Marla Lundak spoke with local farmers about picking these fall favorites.
Take a look up at the tree here. This is a Cortland tree, and the apples are just beautiful. They're all 3.5-inch apples on that tree.
For some, the waterlogged summer in northeast Wisconsin turned into a blessing.
It did have a lot of rain that, caused some fuss in the beginning, but the apples harvest is tremendous.
I'll tell you, it's really neat to come out and see how many apples we have on our trees this year. I've never seen it like this ever.
And more rain means bigger apples, too.
Look at how big this one is.
I've never had apples the size that I have this year. They are just ginormous.
But the beautiful crop doesn't necessarily mean all is well. Both farmers say because of this year's unseasonably warm temperatures and this week's 80-degree weather, the apples are ready now, about 1 or 2 weeks early.
It makes it a little bit harder on the orchards now because we're gathering together all the different varieties at once rather than spread out by 1 week or 2 weeks. So it makes it a little harder on the orchards.
We don't have a cooler, we don't process them, so we try to sell them as they ripen. So all of a sudden somebody turns on the switch and says, okay, you got 100 trees and now they all need to be picked. That presents a problem because we rely on pick your own people to come in, and there's just so many apples.
But having too many apples, they say, is better than having not enough.
They're literally falling on the ground right now. They're so ripe.
And when it comes to pumpkins, Hofacker says the harvest is strong, but unlike the apples, you may have to wait just a little longer.
Our pumpkins are kind of, with the rain, got pushed off where they would be ready on October 1st. They're going to be ready October 14th. So they're a little bit behind because of the rain. We'll just have 2 weeks of pumpkin picking rather than 4 weeks of pumpkin picking.
Well, mosquito season has been a doozy in some parts of the country because of the weather. Meteorologist Nick Russo explains why that's the case.
Weather has actually made this mosquito season worse, and that all goes back to last winter when we had a lot of rain across much of the eastern U.S., including right here in southern New England, the second wettest winter on record. That allowed for the mosquito larvae from the Culiceta melanura mosquito, which is one that bites birds, to survive better in the swamps throughout the wintertime. Then they hatched in the spring, and our hot summer has increased the mosquito activity, which has allowed those viruses to spread. A triple E infected migratory bird starts out the process that will fly potentially into the area. Robins are one of those birds that can spread the virus. And then you get the mosquito spreading it to more birds, potentially a mosquito that bites both birds and mammals bites one of those infected birds, and then it can infect a human. That's how this cycle happens with these mosquito-borne illnesses. Humans are dead-end hosts. They can't spread the virus after they get infected, but of course, it can make people really sick. And in 30 to 50% of triple E cases, people can die. More mosquito days have been happening because of global warming. The environment is becoming warmer, and that's allowing these mosquitoes to live longer. 19 more days that are suitable for mosquitoes now than 50 years ago. And this risk is not going to end until our first freeze, which typically does not happen in southern New England until late October.
We've talked about several different types of folklore on this show, some that are based on partial truth and some are totally made up. Now, we all know coffee can do a lot of things. Today, let's take a look at a recent Instagram post from meteorologist Joy Bettenhausen, testing whether your morning coffee can forecast the weather.
So I grabbed my good friend Kyle for this. We're gonna do a science experiment. Are you ready, Kyle?
Sure, why not?
Okay, we're gonna pour some coffee. Kyle, what cup is this?
This is, it doesn't matter.
That answer doesn't matter. All right, let's get to the experiment. All right, this experiment is really easy to do. You just need coffee and a cup, and essentially we're gonna pour the coffee. If there are bubbles in the middle, that means we're likely under high pressure. If there are bubbles along the edges, we could see low pressure. All right, Kyle, pour the coffee. And we are seeing bubbles along the edges. And you know what? That kind of makes sense because, well, high pressure is on his way out and we are going to be tracking Francine. So would you believe that, Kyle? Coffee could potentially tell what the upcoming weather pattern is.
I mean, I was reading on these internets recently, and is this actual skiance?
Science, Kyle. Science.
Oh.
But there actually hasn't really been too much research done for this, so we can't take it for face value, but it doesn't hurt to have a fun little experiment.
The fall equinox will occur this Sunday, and pretty soon the trees will be changing color all over the country. Emily Gracie sat down with one meteorologist that has created a fall foliage computer model that uses weather data to track and forecast the upcoming season.
Can you tell me some of the really wrong information you see going out about fall colors?
One of my biggest issues with a lot of the information that goes out is the fact that stressed fall color is bad fall color, or an area that has high drought is going to have bad color. In some instances, that is the case, but I've seen many drought-stricken fall foliage forests that have been stunning. So that I always say that even if the trees are stressed going into September, even if you've had drought, we've heavy rains all summer long, all those things stress the trees, but don't worry too much because there's almost always a good show somewhere in your local area. It's very rare for the leaves to just crumble up and fall off the tree and there's no good color.
What can we expect this year? Any trends you're seeing for the 2024 season?
Yeah, so across the East Coast, unfortunately, we do have a lot of drought. And going right back to my caveat from a minute ago, that does not mean that the fall color season is going to be a bust across the East Coast. I think even places like West Virginia, where we currently have severe to extreme drought ongoing, they'll still see some decent fall color. But that does generally make fall foliage more erratic. So we may have peak color on one mountain 2 weeks before the next door mountain. It can be rarely kind of all over the place, just depending on that local soil moisture condition. But for everyday people who are just trying to make plans, you can't really go wrong. New England's going to be great. If you have to avoid somewhere, avoid West Virginia, but it would still be good if you go there too. New England will be wonderful. Like I said, Utah and Colorado are shaping up to have a great season. In fact, we already have some colors turning out there, which is really nice. And the Southeast, we'll see. It's been all over the place this summer with heavy rain followed by drought. that leads to stress. How exactly that will manifest itself come late October and November, not sure yet. We'll have to get a little bit closer and see how things are going.
To hear more about Explore Fall, check out this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. Evan will talk about how he's using artificial intelligence to improve this year's fall foliage forecast. Find Off the Radar anywhere you listen to podcasts. And time now for a short break, but first we soar over Southwest Virginia.
Well, good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Phil Kelly. Temperatures well above average. Some scattered rain back into the central plains, but most of us today going to be into the upper 80s to low 90s. That continues into the end of the work week as well. 90 with some morning showers in St. Louis on Friday. And then Saturday, a cold front going to bring us a little rain into the upper Midwest and central plains. Some cooler air back behind that.
Good Thursday morning to you. Meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region and starting off with some pretty warm readings. In fact, low 80s along the Gulf Coast. We do have upper 60s from the Texas Panhandle and portions of Oklahoma. The afternoon, 90 in Little Rock. We'll look for 97 in Dallas. Really not much of a rain chance, mostly to partly sunny skies. Friday, warm start in the morning. The afternoon, a lot of sunshine. Might get a little bit of rain around Amarillo late day.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. Much cooler than normal temperatures across the Pacific Northwest, keeping temperatures just west of the Cascade Range into the 60s and low 70s. Even cooler down into California, where we have a storm system dropping showers and thunderstorms through California and Nevada. Even some high mountain snow across the Sierra Nevada, with a cool front waiting to swing in for the Pacific Northwest. That's the scene from here.
The National Weather Desk.
Even during a full moon, we only see part of the moon from Earth. How much of the moon do we actually see? Meteorologist Matt Monroe explains.
I want to talk about the moon for just a second. Not sure how many of you realize we only ever see one side of the moon from Earth here, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the moon orbits the Earth every 27.3 days. That's the lunar orbit of the Earth, and as it's doing that, it rotates once in the same amount of time. So one moon rotation in 27.3 days. So as it's actually going around the Earth, it is very slowly rotating, and that's what we call basically synchronous rotation. It's orbiting the Earth pretty much at the same angle as it rotates. So unless you get in a rocket ship and go around to the back side or the dark side of the moon, this is the only side that we ever see. This is a recent full moon, courtesy of viewers Dave and Terry Riffle, and you can actually find the Sea of Tranquility. It's right there. The Apollo 11 landing site is right there at the southern fringes of the Sea of Tranquility, so you can always find it on a full moon.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Make it a great Thursday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for the National Weather Desk.